My name is Jill Coil, and welcome to another episode of No One Dies from Divorce, where we talk the nitty-gritty aspects of divorce and help each other come through this not only surviving, but thriving. I'm a divorce attorney, and I'm interviewing other experts and people just like you who are going through or have been through a divorce, so you can have the latest and greatest information on all things before, during, and after divorce. Let's dive in. Hello, welcome to another episode of No One Dies from Divorce. Today we have a very special guest, Dr. Debi Silber, hailing us all the way from New York City. Well, I guess New York State. Are you in New York City?
Not in the city. No.
Okay. Well, she's East Coast, and we're just really grateful to have you on the show. Thank you so much, Dr. Silber. You mind if I call you Debbie?
You call me Debbie. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Really looking forward to our conversation.
Yes, we are going to talk something today about, do you have post-betrayal syndrome? And I think this is just going to be a really, really important topic for a lot of my listeners because, as you know, I'm a divorce attorney, and I'm talking always about, people that are thinking about going through or after divorce. And we talk a lot about the trauma. And I think that you are just going to be able to resonate and help so many people. But I want to introduce you because you guys, we have a celebrity in our midst. Like, she's amazing. What you're doing, Dr. Silber is the founder of the PBT Post-Betrayal Transformation Institute and is a holistic psychologist, a health mindset, and personal development expert. The author of Trust Again, and is a two-time #1 international bestselling author of The Unshakable Woman and From Hardened to Healed. I love that. The Effortless Path to Release Resistance, Get Unstuck, and Create a Life You Love. Her podcast, From Betrayal to Breakthrough, is also globally ranked within the top 1.5% of podcasts. Her recent PhD study on how we experience betrayal made 3 groundbreaking discoveries that changes how long it takes to heal. In addition to being on Fox, CBS, The Dr. Oz Show, TEDx twice, and more, she's an award-winning speaker and coach dedicated to helping people move past their betrayals, as well as any other blocks preventing them from the health, work, relationships, confidence, and happiness they most want. So welcome to the show, Debbie.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
I was, listening to her TED Talk and doing a little research on this, and it was interesting because I had never really heard the term post-betrayal syndrome. And so I kind of wanted to, I think it's really helpful for my clients to lean into your story of how you got to where you've developed this, and then go ahead and tell us a little bit about what post-betrayal syndrome is.
Sure. Well, it's actually my 30th year in business. And as life would morph
You
into
guys, if you saw her picture, I would never, ever imagine it. Like, you look amazing.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Silber.
So life would change, and so would business. So I started in health, and then mindset, and then personal development. And then I had a really painful betrayal from my family. Thought I did everything I needed to do to heal. And it happened a few years later, this time my husband. Anybody who's been through it, I'm sure a lot of your clients, you're shocked, you're blindsided, you're devastated. Life as you've known it is no longer. So I got him out of the house because that was the deal breaker. And I looked at the two experiences thinking, okay, well, what's common to these two? Of course, me, but what else? And, and I realized boundaries were always getting crossed. I never took my needs seriously. And I'm a believer in, if nothing changes, nothing changes.
Yeah.
So here it was, 4 kids, 6 dogs, a thriving business. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going back for a PhD. And it was in transpersonal psychology, the psychology of transformation and human potential. I was changing so much, I didn't quite understand what was happening. He was too on his own, wasn't ready to look at that. And then it was time to do a study. So I studied betrayal. What holds us back? What helps us heal, and what happens to us physically, mentally, and emotionally when the people closest to us lie, cheat, and deceive. I had no idea this was going to happen, but that study led to 3 groundbreaking discoveries, which changed my health, my family, my work, my life. And I'm happy to get into the discoveries.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I want to, because As we know, I mean, divorce, I mean, let's simplify it. I mean, divorce is like usually one of the biggest trials you're ever going to go through, whether you recognize it at the time or not. Every piece of you changes. And then to add a level of trauma. And a lot of people don't want to think of divorce as trauma. They don't want to have to deal with it the same way. They don't even understand that they really have to grieve it in that way. But in some shape or form, whether it was this big outward gesture, he cheated on me, or she stole all my money or something, there is a level of betrayal in it. And it is a trauma that we have to rectify, we have to heal from. And so this leads just perfectly into all my listeners that deserve to understand this and then to start on that pathway of healing. So let's get right into that. Like, yeah. I think first, tell me what betrayal is.
Yeah. And just even to back up a little bit, when just even divorce, that's kind of a betrayal of expectations. You didn't sign up for that. You signed up for, we're going to live happily ever after. You had your plan and it was in place. And then that plan was different than what showed up. The way I define betrayal is it's the breaking of a spoken or unspoken rule. And every relationship has them. The way it works is the closer we are, the more we depend on someone, the bigger the betrayal. So let's take a child who's completely dependent on their parent and the parent does something awful. That's going to have a different impact than, let's say, your coworker taking credit for your idea, your best friend sharing your secret, right? Still a betrayal, different level of cleanup. In the wake. But it hurt. The reason why it hurts so much is because, think about it. When the person you trusted the most proves untrustworthy, who do you trust? When the one you run to when other people are causing harm is the one causing the harm, where do you go? It shatters any sense of safety and security that we had. This was the person, these were the people who gave us that sense of safety and security. And then this is the person, these are those people who shattered that very sense of safety and security that's been created. So it's traumatizing for sure.
Absolutely. How do you think people understand or discover the betrayal? Like, how do they come to the realization that they kind of have to treat it that way?
A lot of people, it's interesting because sometimes they just hear me speaking and then they'll say, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that's what this was. Yeah. This was betrayal. They were labeling it all these different things. But even just that word betrayal, it has such a visceral reaction. You feel like that gut punch. And sometimes it's been passed off as something else, especially, when we're young, then it's, oh, it was this, it was that. But then when you understand betrayal and realize, oh my gosh, that's what this is. And here's the thing, and the study proved it, time does not heal it. You need a specific protocol to heal from betrayal. And in fact, in the Post-Betrayal Syndrome quiz, which we have on our site, and I'm happy to get into that, but we've had, easily 70,000 people at this point who've taken the quiz, the Post-Betrayal Syndrome quiz on our site, to see to what extent they're struggling. And we've all heard time heals all wounds. I have the proof when it comes to betrayal. That's simply not true. There's a question that says, is there anything else you'd like to share? And people write things like, my betrayal happened 35 years ago. I'm unwilling to trust. My betrayal happened 15 years ago. Feels like it happened yesterday. It's a very different type of experience and needs to be treated that way.
Very, very interesting. Because one of the things, a little bit about my story is that my husband left me when I was in year 4 of our marriage. And I remember distinctly defining that as betrayal because I wasn't ready to give up. And I felt like he was betraying us, betraying our family, because, I used to was so angry. I was like, you're not being a man, just stand up and fight for your family. Not understanding that. And now, my husband and I actually didn't divorce, but we ended up working. And now, as I look back at that, he was feeling just as betrayed, for the disappointments and expectations that were not being met in the marriage. So it's, and I love that you're talking about the fact that the betrayal is something that has to be, I think, recognized first of all, and then dealt with. because it can't, just like you said, it doesn't get, it's just not like eventually you hit a time and it's like, oh, poof, it's gone.
Not at all. And that was actually the first discovery. I was originally studying betrayal and post-traumatic growth. And for those who aren't familiar, post-traumatic growth is, if you can imagine, kind of an upside of trauma, how that trauma, that crisis, whatever it is, death of a loved one, disease, natural disaster, leaves you with a new awareness, insight, perspective that you didn't have. But I had been through death of a loved one and I'd been through disease. And I was like, no, betrayal is very different, feels very different. So, but I didn't want to assume it was the same for everyone else. So I asked all my study participants and I said, if you've been through other traumas besides betrayal, does it feel different for you? Unanimously, they said, oh my gosh, it's so different. Here's why. Because it feels so intentional. We take it so personally. So the entire self is shattered. Think about it. Rejection, abandonment, belonging, confidence, worthiness, trust, they're all shattered and they all have to be rebuilt. So it didn't quite qualify as post-traumatic growth. It's like, yeah, you need to rebuild your life, but you also need to rebuild yourself. So I coined a new term, post-betrayal transformation. That's the complete and total rebuild of your life and yourself after an experience with betrayal. That was the first discovery. Want me to go into the second?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So the second one was that there's actually a collection of symptoms, physical, mental, and emotional, so common to betrayal, it's known as post-betrayal syndrome. And like I said, we've had thousands and thousands of people take the post-betrayal syndrome quiz. Every few months, I pull the stats from the quiz to see where people land. Would you like me to share some?
Yeah, I love it.
Okay, because it would be really awkward and weird if you said no. All right. So imagine, men, women, just about every age group is represented. All right. 78% constantly revisit their experience. 81% feel a loss of personal power. 80% are hypervigilant. 94% deal with painful triggers. Here are the most common physical symptoms. 71% have low energy. 68% have sleep issues. 63% have extreme fatigue. So that means you go to sleep, you wake up, you're exhausted. That's how you know your adrenals have tanked. 47% have weight changes. Maybe in the beginning, you can't hold food down. Later on, you're using food for comfort. 45% have digestive issues. That could be anything from Crohn's, IBS, diverticulitis, constipation, diarrhea, you name it. The most common mental symptoms. 78% are overwhelmed. 70% are walking around in a state of disbelief. 68% are unable to focus. 64% are in shock. 62% can't concentrate. So imagine you can't concentrate. You have a gut issue. You're exhausted. You still have to work. You still have to raise your kids. That's not even the emotional issues. Emotionally, 88% experience extreme sadness. 83% are very angry. And you know how common it is to bounce back and forth between those two. 82% feel hurt. 80% have anxiety. 79% are stressed, just a few more. This is why I wrote the book, Trust Again. 84% have an inability to trust. 67% prevent themselves from forming deep relationships because they're afraid of being hurt again. 82% find it hard to move forward. 90% want to move forward, but they don't know how.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I want to make sure that we're very clear. There is a difference between betrayal and trial. And that's where you are very, very specific on understanding that, because I wrote a chapter in my book about happiness and the level of happiness, what finds happiness. And so I did a lot of research on the hedonic adaptation cycle and about what it means to reach that level of happiness again. And in that specific studies and what I was researching, I did not make the connection between the difference of a betrayal and the difference between a trial. And that's what you're doing, because I think a lot of people think, oh, this is a trial, and therefore I treat it as such. And therefore, you go through the grief stage, time heals all wound, blah, blah, blah. And what you are pointing out, and is so important for my listeners, and for even me, is to understand that there's a difference between betrayal, and it has to be treated differently.
Very different. And here's what's even crazier. So you heard those stats that I just read. I didn't read one that said 20 something percent, 30 something percent. No, here's what's even crazier. The stats I just read isn't necessarily from a recent betrayal. It could be from a betrayal that happened decades ago. So so now imagine your parents did something awful. Your boyfriend, girlfriend, and
They all messed us up.
right? Did something crazy. And here you are decades later, that person, those people may not know, care, or even remember. And we're walking around with anxiety, with gut issues, with low self-esteem, with exhaustion. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
This is why betrayal is very different. And what happens is betrayal is one of those things that an unhealed betrayal, one of the classic signs is a repeat betrayal. The faces change, but it's the same thing. And you keep going from friend to friend to friend, partner to partner to partner, boss to boss to boss. And you say, what the heck, is it me? Yes, it is. Not in that it's your fault, in that there's a profound lesson waiting to be learned. You are lovable, worthy, and deserving. You need better boundaries in place, whatever it is. Until and unless you get that, you will have opportunities in the form of people to teach you. Like, for example, in my experience, first it was my family. I thought I did the work to heal. And then it happened again. And this time it was my husband. And I was like, that's it. And for me, enrolling in a PhD program, I'm talking like, I didn't know how I was going to pay for it, how I was going to manage the time. It was the first thing I had done for myself. It was so bold for me to take on something like that, but it changed my entire life. So those repeat betrayals are a classic sign showing you there's a lesson you need to learn, and it's time to pay attention. You know, the other way we see repeat betrayals in relationships is the big wall goes up. We're like, been there, done that. That hurt too much. I'm not letting anybody near me again. We think that's coming from a place of strength. It's not. It's coming from fear. You know, we see it in health too. People go to the most well-meaning, amazing doctors, coaches, healers, therapists to manage a stress-related symptom, illness, condition, disease. At the root of it is an unhealed betrayal. Like, for example, if 45% of everyone betrayed has a gut issue, they could be going to the greatest gut doctor on the planet. But if that gut doctor, and this is why we created our certification program, if that gut doctor isn't skilled in the third discovery I'll teach you, then they can only get to a certain level of that patient's healing. Right. It shows up in work too. You know, think about it. Someone's confidence is shattered in the betrayal. They may want a raise or a promotion, but they don't have the confidence to ask, or they want to be a team player, collaborative partner. The person they trusted the most proved untrustworthy. How did they trust that boss, that partner? That, you see, it shows up everywhere.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I want to take this quiz now because when, you know, I'm just going through my, you know, past and what I've dealt with. And it's just interesting to start thinking about how have I been dealing with stuff differently or wrong. And
it's not wrong. You know, you do the best with what you can based on the information you have. The third discovery, you will know exactly where you are. You want me to share the third one?
And that's where I was going to go. Yeah. Because I was also, my husband's a doctor and a physician, and he absolutely understands that healing is like 10% what the doctors can give you. And the remainder is your mindset, your perspective. And he is, you know, very good at helping people understand the different perspective to move them to either a place of healing or a place of accepting death. Like, and so I completely agree with you that this, everything you're saying makes perfect sense in that realm. So explain the third discovery.
Yeah. So the third discovery, for me, this was the most exciting. And what we learned was, while we can stay stuck for years, decades, a lifetime, and so many people do, if we're going to fully heal, and by fully heal, I mean symptoms of post-betrayal syndrome to that completely rebuilt state of post-betrayal transformation, we're going to go through 5 now proven predictable stages. And what's even more exciting about that is we know what happens physically, mentally, and emotionally at every one of the stages. And we know what it takes to move from one stage to the next. Healing is entirely predictable. So, I mean, I'm happy to share the 5 stages if you want to hear them.
Yep, I do.
Okay. I mean, it's all we do within the PBT Institute. It's what our coaches are certified in. They're all in trust again, but here's a distilled version right here. So stage 1 is like a setup stage. And if you can imagine 4 legs of a table, the 4 legs being physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. What I saw with all my study participants, me too, was a real heavy lean on the physical and the mental, thinking and doing, and kind of neglecting the emotional and the spiritual, feeling and being. But if a table only has 2 legs, easy for that table to topple over, and that's us. Stage 2, by far the scariest of all of the stages. And this is shock, trauma, D-Day, discovery day. And it's the breakdown of the body, the mind, and the worldview. Right here, you've ignited the stress response. You're headed for every single stress-related symptom, illness, condition, disease. Your mind is in a complete and total state of chaos and overwhelm. You cannot wrap your mind around what you just learned. This makes no sense. And your worldview has just been shattered. Your worldview is your mental model. It's what prevents chaos. It's what governs you. Don't go there. Trust this person. These are the rules. This is how life works. And in one earth-shattering moment or series of moments, every rule you've known to be real and true is no longer. The bottom's bottomed out, and a new bottom hasn't been formed yet. So it's terrifying. But think about it. If the bottom were to bottom out on you, what would you do? You grab hold of whatever you could to stay safe and stay alive. And that's stage 3. Survival instincts emerge. It's the most practical out of all of the stages. If you can't help me, get out of my way. How do I survive this experience? Where do I go? Who can I trust? How do I feed my kids? Here's the trap though. Stage 3, by far, is the most common place to get stuck. Most common stage to get stuck in, and here's why. Once you've figured out how to survive your experience, because it feels so much better than the shock and trauma of where you just came from, you're like, okay, we got this. You think it's good. And because you don't know there's anywhere else to go, you don't know there's a stage 4 or a stage 5. Transformation doesn't even begin until stage 4. But because you don't know there's anywhere else to go, you start planting some roots here. You're not supposed to, but you don't know that. And 4 things happen. The first thing is we start getting all these small self benefits. You get your story. You get to be right. You get someone to blame. You get sympathy from everyone you tell your story to. You get a target for your anger. You don't have to do the hard work of learning to trust again. Should I trust you? Can I trust you? I forget, I'm not trusting anybody. So you plant deeper roots. Now, because you're here longer than you should be, you're not supposed to be, you don't know that. Now the mind starts kicking in with things like, well, maybe you're not all that great. Maybe you deserved it. Maybe this, maybe that. So you plant deeper roots. Now that you're here again, longer than you should be, and these are the thoughts you're thinking, well, this is the energy you're putting out. So like energy attracts like energy. So now you're calling situations and circumstances and relationships towards you to confirm you are exactly where you belong. The misery loves company crowd, they come along now too. It gets worse, but I'll get you out of here. Because it feels so bad, but you don't know there's anywhere else to go. You don't know about stage 4 or stage 5. Right here, you resign yourself. You're like, this stinks, but I need to find a way to just get through my day. Right. So here's where we start using food, drugs, alcohol, work, TV, keeping busy, whatever it is, to numb, avoid, and distract ourselves from what's so painful to feel or face. So think about it. You do it for a day, a week, a month now to have it, a year, 10 years, 20 years. And I'm not kidding. I can see someone 20 years out and say that drinking you're doing, or that numbing in front of the TV you're doing, that emotional eating you're doing. Do you think that has anything to do with your betrayal? And they would look at me like I'm crazy. They would say, that happened 20 years ago. All they did was put themselves in stage 3 and stay there. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And what I found,
and I think a lot of people, like, they think that the hardest, just like you said, is the getting to the realization or being able to define the betrayal. You know, a lot of trauma that happens, you know, before memories, or they blocked it out, and they don't know why they're so entrenched, and then they go through therapy and they figure it out. And I think it's exactly that. They've already done something really hard. They think that they've now accepted or admitted that they have it defined in a box. They don't want to have to do the most important part, which is the hard work.
And here's where the transformation happens. But, I found so many people getting stuck in stage 3. So my newest book, From Hardened to Healed, is just for stage 3, because it's like you've been through the worst of it already. You owe it to yourself to move through the stages, but, and at least to transform after your experience. Anyway, if you're willing to willingness is a big word here, let go of those small self benefits, everything you're getting, from staying stuck, and grieve, mourn the loss, bunch of things you need to do. You move to stage 4. Stage 4 is
I do have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Can you move to stage 4 even living in a victim mentality?
No.
Okay. So it's just like you said, it's about accepting the fact that you're now going to move past this and no longer be a victim. I love that.
You know what it's like? It's like, imagine a trapeze and imagine you're holding on to one bar and you even grab hold of the other. You're not going anywhere unless you grab hold of the first bar.
Yeah.
You see? So it's a move towards it, definitely a move towards it, but you can't get there if you're still hanging on to all your old stuff.
I like
That's
that.
why it's hard, because what's known is familiar and comfortable, even if it stinks.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
and I have now, thinking about it, a few people in my mind that I'm like, you are stuck in stage 3. Okay.
yeah.
Now I'm excited to learn how to get them to stage.
Yeah. And most people are, so much so that I was like, they need their own book. Because it's crazy. How many people find themselves there and they don't think there's anywhere else to go. So that's just where they live. And you owe it to yourself to move through the stages, but people didn't know about it. Listen, I wish there was this roadmap when I was going through my healing, but there is now. So that's the good thing. Anyway, so stage 4 is finding and adjusting to a new normal. And here's where you acknowledge, I can't undo my experience, but I control what I do with it. And just in that decision, you start turning down the stress response. You're not healing just yet, but at least you stop the massive damage you were causing in stage 2 and stage 3. I always use the example of, if you were to move, it's like that feeling. If you were to move to a new house, office, condo, apartment, whatever, it's like everything isn't there yet. It's not quite cozy yet, but it's going to be okay. That's the feeling of stage 4. But here's what's interesting. Think about it. If you were to move, you don't take everything with you. You don't take the things that don't represent who you want to be when you're in that new space. And what I found was, if your friends weren't there for you, you don't take them with you from stage 3 to stage 4. And people say to me all the time, what the heck? I've had these friends 10, 20, 30 years. Is it me? Yes, it is. You're undergoing a transformation. And if they don't rise, they don't come.
Yeah.
Very common to change friendships in this stage. Anyway, when we've made stage 4 cozy mentally, we've made it home, we move into the 5th most beautiful stage. And this is healing, rebirth, and a new worldview. The body starts to heal, self-love, self-care, eating well, exercising, things like that. We didn't have the bandwidth for that earlier. Now we do. The mind is healing. We're making new rules, new boundaries based on the road we just traveled. And we have a new worldview based on what we see so clearly now. And the 4 legs of the table, in the beginning, it was all about the physical and the mental. By this point, we're solidly grounded because we're focused on the emotional and the spiritual too. Those are the 5 stages.
How do you get somebody that's, been betrayed to the point of them realizing that they're worthy of stage 5?
Yeah. A lot that has to happen in stage 3 is a lot of mindset work, a lot of emotional healing, a lot of, just a lot of sort of understanding that even though it happened to you, it's not about you. And especially if this is a repeat pattern, it is really likely that someone may say, well, this is as good as it's going to get. I'm just always going to be in this position to be betrayed. But that's not the case at all. And here's what I'm going to show you something. You'll never forget this. Ready? You see this with my hands. And for the listeners, I'll explain what I'm doing. So when you've been betrayed and you're heartbroken, you're so sad. So here are my hands at the same level, side by side. And then you just want this pain to go away. So all you want is to either reconcile with that person or find somebody new, because you're thinking then the pain will go away, right? This is why we have repeat betrayals all the time. This is the most opportune time to increase to heal physically, mentally, emotionally. And I'm raising my hand up, right? Yep. Physically, mentally, and emotionally. But here's what happens. If we're so committed to this person down here The person, if like, it's like, what do I do to get back with this person? If that's our intention and we start healing, you know what we do? We start sabotaging our success because we don't want to outgrow that person. You like it up here, but you keep sabotaging because you don't want to outgrow them. And then you're up here and you start thinking, well, but why can't they do this? Why can't they meet me at my level? Well, because they're not, that's not where they are right now. So if we're so committed to this person down here and you start doing the work to get up here and heal, eventually you have this where they're looking at you like, ooh, what happened? And you're like, ooh, what, I'm not the least bit interested in you. So after a betrayal, this is when you do the work on your own. And then if the other person is willing, is able, they do the work on their own. And then you meet again up here. And if not, you just, you go your own way, but you can't help but attract this other new level because that's who you are. And here's the thing too, rebuilding is always a choice, whether you rebuild yourself and move on. And that's what I did with my family. Or if the situation lends itself, if you're willing, if you want to, you rebuild something entirely new. I'm talking like from the ground up new.
Yeah.
With the person who hurt you. And that's what I did with my husband. So not long ago, is to totally transform people. We married each other again, new rings, new vows, new dress, and our 4 kids as our bridal party. Never in a billion years would I have done that if I wasn't totally different. And for sure, if he wasn't totally different. But betrayal will show you who someone truly is. It also has the opportunity to wake them up to who they temporarily became. And then you decide what you want to do with that.
Right. And that's the thing. So 2 thoughts that I was having with that is with divorce, if you're not willing to change you, you're never going to change them. So through divorce, it has to be inward focus on you, on figuring out what you need. I can't tell you how many people couldn't ever tell me what they would need. They, as human beings, we just innately think that we have to care about everybody else, and therefore we don't care about ourselves. And so when you turn around and you're like, what do you need? What do you want? They're like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, no wonder your husband could never meet your needs, because you don't even know what you need, and therefore you can't communicate that. The second thought I thought, and I wanted to talk a little bit about this, is when you think like the ultimate betrayal in a divorce, I think adultery is one of the biggest ones. And one of the things I've seen through my, by practice is that adultery is not, I think, the ultimate betrayal, the thing that could never be bounced back from. Because it's usually the betrayal is because the adultery is about that person. What's wrong with them? It usually has nothing to do with you. So I kind of wanted to go through that with just as more of a specific scenario for our listeners who are going through divorce.
Yeah.
Is it possible to bounce back from that ultimate betrayal?
Well, you're looking at someone who did. I mean, it's interesting because we have coaches within the PBT Institute. They all specialize in something, and we have coaches who they're all certified in the 5 stages, but some specialize in reconciliation, some specialize in narcissism, in divorce. There are so many factors that determine what you do with this. I mean, for me, that was the deal breaker. So we were done. That was it. And I was healing. But I remember a book wasn't going to help me with this one. Like I needed a whole PhD to get myself out of this.
Right.
But I remember going through the study saying, thinking to myself, if I can heal from this, I'm taking everybody with me. And really my only intention was to heal, be there for my kids, my clients. That was it. But what I see so often is people are so afraid to have that death and destruction of the old, but betrayal creates that death and destruction of the old. And sometimes it's necessary, but then you have the ability to birth the new. And I'll tell you, I was in the ICU for 11 days. I've lost loved ones. Nothing for me was as hard as this betrayal. Once the heart is involved, and for me, I'm a highly sensitive empath. Integrity is my highest value. So for someone like me, I mean, it's bad for anybody, but for someone like me, it almost doesn't get worse.
Yeah.
But I think that's why I'm doing this, because the healing myself, and I guess, you could say, rebuilding my family, it wasn't even enough. It wasn't even the injustice for me felt too big. I just, no, I just have to help everybody. That's the only way
Right.
to get better. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, you're living proof. I mean, the betrayal, but I think that that's really important is that you turned it around as this is going to be an opportunity for me to focus on myself. And you did what's necessary. And through that, you were able to heal and obviously create this amazing pathway for others that have gone through the ultimate betrayal to really be able to go on a path of healing. Can you answer, like, how does somebody define then that they have been betrayed? Like, how do they know that they have post-betrayal syndrome?
Well, those symptoms that that I mentioned, if you have those symptoms and you're just attributing it to, oh, stress, oh, just aging. No, it's not.
Anxiety.
Yeah, good chance. It's from an unhealed betrayal. Here's the thing too. If you're not healthy, if your life isn't maxed out with just living in the air in abundance in the areas that mean something to you, there's a reason. And there's a mindset issue there. There's like, why not? I see so many people, if you can imagine like a wellness meter, from 0 to 100, I see so many people striving for 50%. Like, well, if I have a job to go to, it's okay. If my kids aren't in trouble, it's okay. If my partner comes home at the end of the day, it's okay. If I can button my pants, it's okay. Like, what is that? So I would say, if you're only striving for that 50%, what's that about? You're not here for that, and when you use betrayal, when you look at that as an opportunity for transformation, I mean, that's trauma well served. Then you're doing something with this pain, because it's the pain is so great. It's so enormous. It's so all consuming that really, I mean, it can kill you. I wound up in the emergency room with panic attacks. I'm like, what the heck is this? This is going to kill me. And that's just, broken heart syndrome. It's real.
Yeah.
So it's not worth it. It's not worth it. Healing is waiting for you in that stage 4 and stage 5. It doesn't exclude anyone.
I want to do a session with you after, like, I'll schedule it and pay you money to talk about how, because one of the biggest things that I've struggled with in my career is the inability for other women to support, strong women to support who I am or what I'm doing. And I've always wondered, like, is it me? And I've like, what am I doing that I can't have these very powerful women that I look up to turn around and be proud of me? And so as we're going through our discussion, I'm thinking, man, betrayal doesn't have to be like this, I was molested as a child, or I was, betrayed, my friend stole money from him. It could really be, something like this that has caused us to now go down this path of not being able to reconcile why things continue to happen. And there's a pattern. And I'm like, man, I want to talk more about this because I'm writing my next book on it. And I really have been doing a lot of research and thinking of my past and what I can do, because I want to be the change. I want to be that woman that supports every other woman because I can and because I want to. So anyways, what you're doing is just really, really important. But what I wanted to ask was, what are the questions we can ask ourselves to say, that we're numbing or avoiding or distracting ourselves from emitting the betrayal?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I would explore right there, there's another really profound type of betrayal, and it's self-betrayal. So often it's like, what's going on there? Why is it that something may be going really well and we sabotage ourselves? There's always something there, always.
Yeah.
So I'm going to leave you with that one. But what I would say is, here are 4 questions to see if you're numbing, avoiding, distracting. And I'd invite everybody to write these down. That's my way of saying write these down. So the first one is, am I numbing, avoiding, distracting? If so, how? Call yourself on it. Do you walk into the kitchen, you're not the least bit hungry, there you are in the cabinets, right? What's up with that? Do you walk into a room and you put the TV on just to drown out the sound of your own thoughts? What's going on with that? Be honest with yourself. The second question, what am I pretending not to see? Right? Am I pretending not to see there's trouble in my relationship? Am I pretending not to see that health issue that needs my attention? Am I pretending not to see I hate my job? What am I pretending not to see?
Mm-hmm.
The third question, what's life going to look like in 5 to 10 years if I do nothing? Play it out. We don't like to do that. Play it out 5 to 10 years. That health issue that you're ignoring, play it out 5 to 10 years. That relationship issue that you're ignoring, play it out 5 to 10 years. That work issue, what does that look like in 5 to 10 years if I do nothing? And the last question, what could life look like in 5 to 10 years if I changed now? I'm not saying that change is easy, but change begins when you tell yourself the truth.
Oh my gosh, I love that. So how do we know if we haven't healed from betrayal?
Yeah, you know it by those, if you have those symptoms of post-betrayal syndrome, you know it if you're having repeat betrayals, if you're keeping people at a distance, you know it if you don't have the confidence to speak up because somewhere along the line, that confidence was shattered. You know if you don't have a sense of safety and security.
Yeah. So how do we know what do we need to do to move forward and heal from the betrayal?
The first thing is you want to know what stage you're in. That's crucial because you can't change what you're unaware of. Right. So you need to know what stage you're in. And then the second thing, and this is going to sound kind of silly, but check your willingness because you may think, oh no, of course I want to heal. No, you don't, because it's going to create a shakeup in everything around you. In fact, there were 3 groups in my study who didn't heal. The first, this was the group who refused to accept their betrayal. They just had their story. They were sticking with it. They weren't going anywhere. The second group, this was the group that was numbing, avoiding, distracting. They ran to the doctor who put them on a mood stabilizer. They started taking, anti-anxiety medication, whatever it is. Or they would numb, avoid, they would drink, they would whatever. They didn't heal. The third group, this was the group where the betrayer had very little consequences. So whether it was out of not wanting to break up a family, financial fear, that was a big one. Religious reasons, that was a big one too. Mm-hmm. They just did all they could to turn the other cheek, put it behind them. I saw 2 things with this group. Number 1, a further deterioration of the relationship. And number 2, this group by far was the most physically sick. Your broken heart can't handle that.
Yeah.
But people are afraid of the death of the old, but that's the only way you rebirth the new.
Okay, so I have a question then. Does everybody have some level of betrayal?
I think if you live long enough, there's a good chance. And it's so widespread, and it doesn't even have to just be with the people closest to you. I remember when I was doing the study, they were talking about companies, and I thought this was so interesting. And it was something called the love turns to hate principle. And it was, we would rather choose a product we know is bad for you. Like, for example, you drink, it's a problem. You buy cigarettes, it's a problem, right? But we would rather do that than purchase a product that tells us it's good for us and turns out it's not. That's when that love turns to hate so quickly.
Yeah.
So it's so widespread. I mean, people feel betrayed by their bodies, by God. I mean, it could be anything. And it all needs to be looked at, sorted through, and healed.
Right. Absolutely. I think that also comes down to just like you said, our ability to move through the stages. And I'm just simplifying what you've said today because you've done it amazingly, but so many of us use excuses as these bricks, and we just keep putting these excuses in front of us. And eventually we have this brick wall that we can't break down. And so I'm always say, stop. Excuses are the brick walls that are keeping us being the best. And so if you're stuck in that, oh, I don't even want to discover the betrayal, I don't want to, or I'm just living in that victim stage, I don't want to move past the stage 3, you are going to continue building those walls, those brick walls that you are never going to be able to move forward. And just like you said, you will see it in every aspect of your life, whether it's in your job, your friendships, your, relationships, your family. So I think that this is so important. And, I just get those bricks out of the way. Stop making excuses. If you use the word but in the middle of a sentence, you're just about to use an excuse. And so I always at work, I tell my employees, don't put a but in there. Tell me what you need and what you're going to do. So with that, I guess the grand finale, tell our listeners, how can we learn to trust again?
Yeah, you mentioned a brick wall. I look at trust as a brick wall, and people ask me all the time, can trust be repaired? And I say, no. Can it be rebuilt? Yeah, but it's a big process. And I look at trust like that brick wall, in that the only way I know of a brick wall to be built is brick by brick by brick, right? Same thing with trust. Every opportunity someone has to show that they're trustworthy, that's one brick in that brick wall. So that's why it takes a long time to build. But now imagine the person who built the brick wall in one earth-shattering moment, series of moments, that crashes the whole thing down, right? So the other person, the person who's been betrayed, whose trust has been shattered, you have every right to look at the rubble of bricks and say, I don't have the least bit of interest in watching that thing get rebuilt. Totally fine. You walk away. However, if you're willing, and willingness would be your only role right there, if you're willing to watch that brick wall be rebuilt, the other person has to be a really good bricklayer. And it goes up the same way it went up the first time, brick by brick by brick. Every opportunity they have to show that they're trustworthy, that's one brick in that brick wall. But here's what I see. I see the person who built the brick wall shatters it. They're not really all that interested in rebuilding it. And the person whose trust has been shattered goes, fine, I'll build it. Well, they never feel safe. They always have a certain level of anxiety. And that's because that other person didn't own it, didn't take full and complete responsibility, and have that whatever it takes attitude to rebuild that brick wall.
How do you then decide if that person is worth watching build that trust again?
Yeah. We teach something within the PBT Institute. It's called the window of willingness. There really are levels and stages where, if it's safe and in your best interest to heal and rebuild with someone, or to heal yourself and move on. And it's really clear, but betrayal will, it can wake someone up, and then they will have that whatever it takes, that what the heck did I do? I can't even believe it. And then also it'll show you who they truly are. And when that's the case, it's at this point in time, in their current level of who they are, they're not capable or willing to give you any more than that.
Yeah, absolutely. This has just been really, really amazing. I am in awe of what you're doing. And again, it's, I feel like sometimes people take this overwhelming approach, and that they're just overwhelmed by the information that you kind of laid out today. But what I want to offer to my listeners is that it's not that we're like throwing this all out to make it complicated. What we're wanting you to do is open your eyes to recognize that there is a better way, and you are worthy of that way. And people like Dr. Silber are paving this, beautiful pathway for you to heal, to be the best version of yourself. And nobody says you have to do it alone.
It's impossible to do this alone. It really is. You can, at a time where we need support the most, we're the least likely to seek it because there's so much shame, embarrassment, but you need support, but you need the right type of support, because the wrong type of support does more harm than good. We have so many people coming into the Institute with therapy trauma. If that therapist isn't highly skilled in betrayal, you better be careful. And also, if let's say you're in a support group, but if it's more like the Ain't It Awful Club, when you start healing, you almost don't belong. So you really need to be very careful with who you surround yourself with during this very fragile time.
I think that's so important. And I always say that, like, your friend and your neighbor shouldn't be the one you're asking for legal advice. You have to go to the experts. And what Debi's doing at her institute is they have honed in on their expertise of what it is to have this post-betrayal syndrome. And so, Debi, tell everybody how to find you, because I'm sure there's listeners that are like, oh my gosh, I need to figure this out or find more information.
I mean, we have everything at the PBT Institute. The PBT is in Post-Betrayal Transformation, the PBT Institute.com. I mean, start with the quizzes, either the Post-Betrayal Syndrome quiz or the Healed or Hardened quiz. You'll see exactly what stage you're in. And then just check out the Institute too. I mean, we have live daily classes with our certified coaches and a very unique community that's there to lift and inspire. We're all in a club we never wanted to be in, but we're all lifting and inspiring each other. We bring in experts to teach master classes, and our self-paced program, literally to move you through the stages. The whole idea of it is you come in stage 2 or 3 and you leave when you're in stage 5 and beyond. I mean, that's all we do.
I think that's awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're super busy and you're changing the world. I think that that's really, and you've got a fan. I'm proud to support you and the work that you're doing. And I just want to lend that arm of hope that betrayal, trauma, trials is a stepping stone to a better version of yourself. And it's just about understanding the keys and the tools to get there. And what Dr. Silber is doing with her institute is exactly that. You can get through this. So thank you so much, Dr. Silber. It's just been a pleasure.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Remember, that's another episode of No One Dies from Divorce. If you're interested in a specific episode or have questions for us, please send those our way. You can DM us on all things Jill Coil, Instagram, Facebook, and we would love to be able to bring that information right to you every week. Remember, no one dies from divorce. You're going to be okay. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed, please subscribe, follow, and share. I'd love to hear your questions and feedback. You can contact me at community@jillcoil.com. See you next time. I am an attorney, but I am not your attorney. Any advice given on the podcast is general and shall not be construed as legal advice.